This is Barry Bettman, your host, and we have an extraordinary treat for you today. We have a panel of amazing people. Some people might internally call them a motley crew, but it's from the original Cars.com transformation team. And so we're so happy to have everybody here today. So I'm going to go through a little bit of introductions. We have an hour lightning panel today, so just to let everybody know, I'm going to go through some basic introductions. I'll tell you who's on the call. And actually, I'm going to say your name and just say hello and where you're from, and then we'll do introductions in a minute. So first of all, we have John. John, you want to say your name, where you're from?
Yeah. Hey, everybody. This is John Manganero. I'm the head of product at a company called Social Solutions down in Austin, Texas, and we build software platforms for nonprofit organizations across the country.
Okay, great. Len, you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. This is Len Lagasty. I'm a coach and based out of Chicago, but mostly just wandering the world. And whoever will have me as a coach, that's where I'll go.
Beautiful. Thank you, Len. Let's go to Clay. Hi, Clay. Welcome.
Hi, Clay Johnson in Chicago. Currently CTO at a smaller automotive leasing company. So.
Great to have you, Clay. Now we'll go to Jacques.
Hey everyone, Jacques Harper. I was a user experience manager and interaction designer at Cars.com, and went and did some agile coaching for a while after that, but I've ended up back in the user experience world and still in Chicago. And yeah, 2011 is when we last did this. I have to remember that, so when people ask me, I can tell them when I was at Cars.com.
Great, thanks so much, Jacques. We're gonna go to Mark. Hi, Mark.
Hello, how you doing, Barry? This is Mark Ferraro. I've been doing agile coaching. Very fortunate to be part of the transformation team at Cars, and looking forward to today's conversation.
Great, thanks, Mark. And Cy.
Thank you so much, Barry, and thank you folks for being here. This is the team that made magic happen. I just happened to be present when they did it. So thank you, folks. Love you all.
Okay, I think I got everybody. If there's anybody I missed, let me know.
Yeah, me. Sorry.
Do we miss you, Jim?
Yeah.
Jim.
Okay, please, Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. So yeah, Jim Sanders. I'm actually director of IT project services up at a company called Uline, and we're in Pleasant Prairie, Wisconsin. If anybody ever had heard of Pleasant Prairie, Wisconsin, I didn't until I started working here. So
It's very nice up there.
yeah, it is beautiful. Closest
Pleasant.
Six Flags.
There you go.
Great, thank you, Jim. I think we got everybody here. So we have a little format, and actually I'm going to ask Cy, because I've been working with Cy. Can you kind of lay out kind of what the format's going to look like today? Would you mind?
Definitely. So we're going to pretty much allow the group to provide a little bit of background relative to the initial or the original Cars experience. That'll provide a backdrop. And then what we're really going to dive into is kind of exploring what learnings these good folks carry with them, what learnings that have emerged for them since that original journey, and that they wish they would have known back then. This will really offer a great perspective for all the listeners. And by all means, any other guidance. And I really want to go back to what I said, if you don't mind. This is the group that made magic happen. If it wasn't for this team, I think a lot would have been lost all around. So I'm really looking forward to everybody's insights all around.
Great, thank you so much. So let's kick this off. And who was it in our prep room that said 407 years ago?
That was Jacques.
I don't know who said that. No, I don't know.
Go ahead or whoever, do that again, because that really was a nice way of starting.
No, I already made like a time joke, both in our pre-chat and just now. So somebody else make a joke about how long.
Mark, then you can do the other one you did. About transformation and losing hair.
Well, you can see from the video. Hang on a second. I think I'm having trouble with my internet connection here. So.
Okay, so Mark doesn't have a lot of hair, and he claims that he lost it because he did transformation. Okay.
No, I think he's claiming he lost it because they got a bad network connection.
There we go. There we go. So it's often been said that transformation can be hard, but what we're seeing from the beginning of this, that it's a lot of fun. So let's start off with the question about what learnings from the original Cars.com experience remain with you today, and what have proved valuable. So let's kick her off.
I'll go ahead and jump in. I've been thinking about this since we started organizing this, and one of the things that I find myself telling people over and over and over again is go back to the fundamental principles. Go back to what was, what's on the homepage of the Agile Manifesto. Read those 4 things, paraphrase them, translate them into your language or your lingo or whatever it might be. That's one of the things that Cy and Mark brought us is here's how it's written, but here's how you think about it. And start there. Start there. Don't read somebody else's book. Don't take somebody else's course. Start right there at the top and just work it through and see what it means for you. Drops the mic.
Nice. Who else would like to contribute?
Yeah, this is John. I'll go ahead and talk. I think one of the key messages that Cy and Mark and some of the folks that helped us do the CARS transformation were saying, it's consent versus consensus. Not everybody has to agree with you. You don't need a bunch of unanimous decisions to move forward and make progress and iterate. You're really looking to gain buy-in, and support, but definitely not approval as you make these changes. So change management, updating behaviors, trying something new, rocking the boat, whatever term you want to use is it's going to be difficult for some people while others embrace it. And hopefully if you're part of a transformation team, you're the ones embracing it and you're setting the standard by moving forward and not getting caught in the rigmarole of red tape or politics, but finding ways to make progress, even if it's small progress. Keeping that momentum moving forward is going to be huge as you move through any type of transformation project, whether agile or not. So that was one of the key takeaways that I learned as, a relative, probably 5 or 6 years into my product management experience is when I started doing this with the Cars.com team. So that was a big step forward for me, and it's something I've continued to improve upon as, my career progressed within product, including at our current company here, which I can get into later. But that was one of the biggest takeaways that I've always kept in the back of my head.
That's great, John. It kind of reminds me of the television show MacGyver. It sounds like in some ways it's a little MacGyver-like. You have to do. You got to get done what you got to get done.
So I'll jump in here. One thing, I'm sure this is where it originated with this crew at some point, but the idea of being comfortable with being uncomfortable. So knowing that you're going to be challenging some status quo, and not everybody's going to be okay with that, and everybody's a little bit different on how they react to change in that regard, and it's okay. Is the key learning I walked away with.
Yeah, so that whole thing of being uncomfortable, being okay with uncertainty, is that what you're saying, Jim?
Yeah.
Yeah. Those things are changing and morphing so quickly and dynamic, and a lot of changes. That's really good. Say just a little bit more about how do you and the team be okay with that?
Well, going back to 8 years ago or thereabouts, I think having a core group like we had with a bunch of strong individuals had some credibility with the organization helped, and having junior folks kind of look up and see others that were helping kind of hold their hand through it, I think helped. And then the other aspect kind of to go along with this is starting light and starting with a lightweight direction, and let others contribute and evolve and emerge based on the learnings, and just get going on it. So that was really, really helpful, I think, for this group, because we didn't have all the answers when we started, and we just put the stripes on the highway, as I like to say, and go.
It reminds me a little of parenting. You can read books, you can take classes, but at some point you just got to be with your child and work through it. It sounds like you had a baby there.
Yeah.
What do you think, Len?
Yeah,
I
think that's a good segue. I think so much we could probably spend multiple days doing this to pull out all the things that we experienced and the lessons that we learned. But the first thing that came to mind when this kind of invite popped up to me was just how much importance we should place on these types of events, because I think about my career and where I've been. Nothing I would have done since CARS would have happened unless that experience with CARS happened. Just being surrounded by people like yourself, Cy, and Mark, and this amazing group of people created a trickle-down effect that you actually can't even fathom. When you think about the people that we touched at Cars, who then went off and did other things, either in the Agile space or other places as well. So the first takeaway for me was what a kind of a life-changing experience that was for me, to say, hey, you could, it was like a launching pad. So that was an amazing, just personally for me, like that experience for me that remains with me today. But the other thing that I take with me every day, and I still hear the voice of Sai in my head every day, and so whatever, however that hits you, I still hear these things around just the power of pilots and starting small and just getting going and starting a movement. Oftentimes, this day and age, we try to make things so complex, and we try to do all these big, massive things, but just starting small. Finding a small group of people who could change the world and start creating that space. I always say, like, you can't schedule the revolution, but you can create an environment for one to happen. And I think that was what I learned most from that Cars experience, is that you just got to create that environment for magic to happen, as you say, Sai, and let's let it happen.
Beautiful.
Far too kind, man. Clay, my good friend, say something.
I think I'll talk about one of the things that I kind of learned and will continually struggle with is when you are doing something like this, you're kind of headed down a path, right? And you're trying to get an organization and people and even your peers to walk down that path with you. And I remember always having trouble bitching and moaning about me running down that path because I knew where I was going to go, and then leaving everyone behind, and then complaining that they were behind there and not keeping up, when I should have been helping them see the path and then shepherding them through the path and kind of keeping, I mean, not to be derogatory, but the sheep on the path, right? And understanding that unless other people see and believe in the path, they're just going to keep fighting against going down the path, no matter how much you try to drag them down that path. And that's even true of the people working with you. Like, we had disagreements about where the path was going to go within, the room that we were all kind of in at any given moment. So really keeping track of kind of knowing that progress is not the same every day, knowing that progress is sometimes moving backwards on the path in order to move forward.
But, and you say it elegantly, all in the sharing that you folks are providing. We all guided each other, but I'll tell you, as I look at Mark, myself, we were the lucky ones to stumble upon you. The right DNA was there at the right time, right? And I remember Jim was the first individual I met when I walked in the door, and Jim had mentioned, and the leadership team had mentioned, that this was attempted some years ago. And then, quite honestly, I got a few warnings about Clay. He's magical. He's a bit to juggle, is what they told me, relative to Clay. And then definitely when I met Len, Len, you were my exit strategy, right? Remember, that was some of the first thing I said.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Imagine, and then John was, I think, new to the team at the time, and some of the faces. So you folks are truly the magical ones.
I'd love to jump in on kind of building on what Clay said about the, going back and bringing the people along. One of the things I keep finding in the work I've done since is that trust is such a huge part of this. And maybe what we had was a team that came to trust each other pretty well, and each of us was pretty well trusted by the people we worked with in the organization. So for those who might be, hearing about Cars.com's transformation for the first time, each of us represents a discipline within Cars. So I was talking with my fellow user experience managers, John with his colleagues in product ownership. Len, what was it? I forget exactly what you did.
Yeah. I was working with Jim. I think it was more like agile methodology type of.
Okay, so you guys were both sort of in the program office kind of.
Yeah.
So each of us had a relationship with the people we represented, and because we were Cars employees, some of us had been there, a couple of years, some, at least a few months, whatever. We had the trust of the people who we thus represented when we were discussing things. And going forward from that, as an Agile team starts to work, it has to earn the trust of the people it's working for, the stakeholders in the organization. And, maybe to jump a little bit ahead to, what learnings or guidance or the later two parts of this discussion, if the team can't get the trust of a product owner, or a product owner can't trust the team, or the other stakeholders can't trust the team, there's going to be trouble. And I think to bring it back, if you need to come back down the path a little ways and pick those people up again, I think you have to do that, Oh, conversation killer? I'm sorry.
No. So folks, how has trust really kind of played out since the journey, and what experience have you folks had with the whole concept of trust, as Jacques is sharing?
I will jump back in if nobody else does.
Go for it.
Yeah, this is John. I'll say I like the trust aspect, and when Clay talked a little bit about shepherding as well, I agree. But for those that know me well enough on a personal level, this won't be a surprise to you. I agree to a point. And when shepherding becomes dragging people against their will, kicking and screaming, it's going to be a detriment to not only the transformation, but the organization. So trust is really important, that people understand that buy-in is important. We talked about consent over consensus, but you can't realistically think with an organization of more than a few dozen people. If you go through something this serious and you're transforming this serious, not everybody's going to buy into it, and not everybody's going to come out on the other side together. So at Cars.com, we did have people that did not buy into the culture change, did not buy into the change management movement, and it was okay. They weren't part of the company at the end of it, because it can be such a significant change for people. So at some point, you need to kind of be able to look at something, or more importantly, someone, and say, we need you to buy into this new way of doing things. We need you to buy into this plan. We want you to be a part of it. We want your support. But if you're not going to go against it, we need to come to a point where you say, is this going to be the right organization for you moving forward? And so I've become a lot better at having those conversations up front. I always want everybody to succeed. And much like Clay, I hope that I have gotten better at the shepherding process, but you can't try to be everything to everyone. You need to understand that not everybody's going to buy into this. And for the sake of the change and for the sake of the overall organization, you need to be able to have those tough conversations. It's not going to be for everybody. So when those conversations come up, just be cognizant and aware. And one of the lessons learned I've had since 7 or 8 years ago when we started this is to have those conversations sooner or later, because those people, on a rare circumstance, but it's not against human nature, can become a detractor. They can start to get other people to buy into their view, and now you have groups that are kind of forming this conflict as opposed to a couple individuals that may not be buying in. What you don't want to have happen is a clique start to form of influencers that are trying to either slow down or stop the progress of the transformation.
John, this is Barry. I have two questions that will help our participants understand something. One of them is, how long of a period of time was the transformation? And the other is approximately how many people were both on the transformation team. I think we might know the answer to that. And also, I'm curious, this is for you or anybody, how many people work there? Because when you talked about it sounded like maybe a lot of people. So for you or anybody else, I think that would be a good thing for everybody to know that's watching us.
What do you think, Si? Was the overall transformation just under a year, but we had a pretty good sprint for the first 4 to 6 months where we were heads down? Is that fair?
Yeah. It was interesting. If I can add to the timing factor, the core team was so strong to that point, Barry, that we actually, and I remember having conversations initiated actually by Jim, who was my initial point of contact there. You folks carried through phase 3 where you didn't need us for the whole thing.
Yep.
And I think on the relative size of the organization, we were probably around 800 to 1,000 people, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
I'll lean on the tenured folks, but yeah.
Predominantly sales, which were some of the people you also had to kind of drag along in an interesting way. I think on John's point about like not being able to like drag everyone along or whatever. I mean, a shepherd has that staff in order to hit some sheep at times, right? Stand out. But there was a definite strategy in place that we had or subset had around identifying key people in the organization and spending extra time doing a couple of things. One, informing them. Two, educating them on, like, keeping them informed in the progress. Two, educating them on how their role is improved through this process, right? And in order to do that, you have to know what their role is. And I spent a lot of time in the operations groups and the sales groups and the worlds outside of just, it's not just tech and product and UX. So, and then a third one is like identifying the people who want to look like heroes in the organization and making sure that you can enable them to be heroes, and they create those little pockets of bread that help tamper down the detractors that John was talking about. Because those detractors will pop up anywhere in the garden of the organization. You need to have enough people out there weeding kind of consistently that those things get pulled out as early as possible, so that you don't have to go into the backhoe and just kind of dig everything out and start over.
So that has a new meaning for breadcrumbs, leave some breadcrumbs and be able to have those heroes get to the breadcrumbs and be able to support them in that. Brilliant.
And one thing just to add on, we talked about the trust in this team, but taking a level up and just comparing it to kind of current day in my world, at least, having more senior executive leadership and support to, in this case, this group back in Cars. So, the executive leadership of Cars was very, very supportive, especially when, we started to, realize some of those initial wins, right? So, get a base hit, and then go for a double, then, hit the home runs, and it just built on each other's, outcomes. So that just, was a dramatic accelerator from a organization perspective to recognize the value of what the team was doing.
Yeah, I remember our CEO, Mitch Golub, was running a meeting, and the product team I was piloting was kind of the guinea pig, the first people to jump in with Cy, and he expressed it. He kind of told his executive leadership team and some of the management team, he showed off some of our early wins to get that buy-in. He talked about how, I want to get the number right, I think, there were 4 of us in terms of just developers working on a set of bugs. It was tech debt, and he explicitly called out that we basically knocked off 80 or 90 bugs in our backlog on a 2-week sprint, which was crazy, right? But he as the CEO bought into that and shared that with people. So it did gain momentum, and when people saw that the CEO was taking this seriously, they started to pay a little bit more attention and to get some buy-in as well. So to echo Jim's point, those upper management, those leadership people that are championing the efforts, whether they're playing an active role in it or not, definitely gained us some early momentum and feedback in the process, which was cool.
One of the things I remember based on the adoption is, as more and more, what we were calling pilots at the time, were running and they were showing these success stories, we got to the point where it was a shift where we had more people coming and saying, hey, we want to be the next pilot. We want to be the next one. At that point, it felt like it went very viral. We had this viral change going, and, at that point, it was just how fast can we get it across the enterprise. So
let's not forget, too, if I recall correctly, there had been some employee surveys not long before the engagement started, and there was a real hotbed of enthusiasm. Not quite the word I want, but and unrest is also not quite the word I want, but some combination of those, of people saying, we're tired of endless requirements gathering meetings, and we're tired of not pushing to production but twice a year, whatever it might be. And so the ground was really primed, and our senior leadership knew that because they had seen the results of these engagement surveys. So I think if somebody's out there looking for a tool to convince a senior leader, maybe it's a formal poll that shows people are dissatisfied with the way they're currently working. Just wanted to toss that out.
That's so good. That's so good. I just want to say one quick thing, Mark. That's so good, Jacques, because what I'm hearing you say is when there's actual progress being made, you can see the progress bar, of life or the business or of, the computer install. You can see the progress bar. You feel like things are going, and then more people want to hop on it. Is what I'm hearing. Yep. Go ahead, Mark. Thanks.
No, that's all done.
On that, a little anecdote on that, I remember walking through the floor and seeing people who had set up their own personal walls on their, on those overhead filing cabinet things. And, like my to-dos this week, and they had, in to-do, in progress, and done. And that's when I knew, yeah, like we have effected a big change here. That people would just set that up for themselves, individually working.
And what was it before? Was it quite different in the early days where the transformation started?
Oh, we were, the typical, I can remember those meetings with some of the folks who aren't with us on the call today, but Jonathan Yankin, I can remember he and I and a bunch of people in a room broadcasting the requirements document against the wall or a screen and reading through and arguing over, should that be could or should, and reviewing these documents, and it just went on forever. And then some developer came to my desk after the project was underway, and he said, hey, what should happen if the such and such? And I said, oh, that's on page 117 of the requirements. Didn't you read it? And I was kind of a jerk at the time. But that was typical. We did these long documents, we sorted them all out, and there was no way that anybody could read them all and understand it. It was painful.
Jacques, one of the things I wanted to build on too was the satisfaction surveys, and really the transformations that I've been involved with. The ones that are really going after the well-being or versus, hey, we just got to increase performance, we got to make things better. But at Cars, there was definitely this thing in the air that we really want to increase the well-being. There was a turnover problem, and I think that could be one of the keys to the success. The fact that they really were focused as much on the individual well-being aspects as the performance aspects, really making Cars a better place to work. And I go back to that as an example to this day in my coaching practice to say, focus on the well-being. You don't get the performance without looking at the well-being along the way.
Yeah, nice.
Chime in, Len, Clay, John, Jim. You're all too quiet, gentlemen. What did you say? What's running through your mind?
Well, all that I remember is when Kane Grau, who was I think he was the CIO or Vice President of Technology when he came in, he called me up and asked me to come in and help kind of with this agile change. All he said was something like, we're screwed up and I need help. And so just to give you a little bit of the background of what we needed to do. And I think that was the catalyst. And I think as Mark said, we brought that humanness to it, that this isn't just about checking things off a list. This isn't about getting things done and burning people out. This is about building something that has a heartbeat to it, that is organic, that's going to spread, that is going to be done in a healthy way. Now, we weren't perfect. Like, there's still a lot of things that we could learn from that journey, and we have learned from that journey that I've taken forward as well. But the spirit of that was there. That spirit of, hey, let's do this as a community. Which is a very different vibe than just saying, hey, let's make an announcement at a town hall meeting and like we are going to be this thing. It is, let's see what we could do in small ways, in a healthy way, in a community, and see how well we can let that spread.
I just want to talk about the kind of like top down, what the high end people. So we had, the mandate was to kind of move to Agile, but the people wanted. I'll say the people, the proletariat, wanted improved kind of work environment, get more. They actually wanted to get stuff done, right? Like we just did not get things done. The people who kind of like read the survey results and pushed it through, they all created their little pockets of vacuums of this is what I'm going to get out of the organization going Agile, right? We were all about capital A on Agile. So, you would think we invented the thing sometimes. I know that as we were going along, we were kind of trying to coach up what it was, trying to talk about, hey, it's just a thing, just, transitioning to a transformation, not, just gonna all of a sudden one day we're good. So I remember Jim and I had to spend a lot of time together talking with senior leadership and kind of like talking people down off the ledge or kind of helping explain where they're at, And I know that after those meetings, Jim probably had to spend a lot of time kind of explaining why Clay said something that was a little offensive or something. So there's a lot of kind of lingering effects, especially from the people who aren't hands-on, that you always kind of have to plan for. And it becomes a UX problem, if you will, to do the discovery around your leadership team, what their drivers are, and how you can help coach up the leadership team to understand the actual organizational benefits and how it feeds into their drivers.
Yeah, and I think just building on that, I think one of the things that we probably missed there was actually not giving the leaders things to do in this new way environment.
Sure.
Like, so a lot of times we say, hey, teams, pilots, here's some new ways of working. Here's new roles that we're going to introduce. But then we just let leaders kind of sit off to the side and say, hey, just watch this happen. When I think one of the key takeaways for me is what we should have done differently or could have done differently was to make it more of a holistic transformation and get more of those leaders to say, hey, this is what it means to be a shepherd / leader in this organization, and how to just paint visions and paint the lines, and we'll go in that direction. So I think there was certainly some tension and some struggle with that leadership group that we could have done a little bit differently.
That's great. That's great, because what you're leading to, which is the next question, and you've already gone there, Len, and set the bar, is what learning. I'll just say this for everybody: what learnings, did you have that if you had, you would have done differently, or what do you know now that you didn't know then? So that's a great one. Let's keep going down that track.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from some of you who are still actively coaching. How many times the worst problem we have in the transformation is that you're still on a yearly budget cycle or quarterly or something, where somebody is saying, well, is that going to be done by then? And all kinds of pressure comes for that. I'd love to hear. I see it. I haven't experienced it as much as some of you, I'm sure.
Well, I'll just jump in here. That is a continued challenge, and it doesn't and will never go away. So as much as we like to say that, yeah, we're gonna kind of break out the finger symbols and burn the incense and go totally off the grid and do something totally,
That's a little extreme, Jim.
It's hard, but because no matter how hard you try to convince others that there is business operations that just continue. So I stopped beating my head in a lot of cases and just try to embrace and understand that position and mold it more into kind of a hybrid. And it's actually working pretty good. It's not ideal, but it is at least move the needle to some extent.
Yeah, and I think some of it's going to be the nature or the raw DNA of the company you're trying to change. The organization I'm working with now, they are going with no budgets. It's like there's no targets. But there's a ton of accountability, and you've given big groups and big departments this accountability. We trust you. We talked about trust. So I think it may not be this generation or the next generation, but probably in a couple generations of change, it's going to be much more of a common thing. But I think that's where, to kind of answer your question, Jack, of what I think we need to be bolder. I think we need to be more visionary around some of those things, around some of our deep-rooted systems around performance management and the way that we reward people and recognize people. All that stuff has to change. And I think if transformation teams aren't willing to start setting some of those and start pushing some of those boundaries, we are just going to get kind of stuck and kind of do sometimes these halfway things that actually will feel worse than actually going through a full transformation. So I think it's okay to push the boundaries in a safe way.
I think it's representing the entire ecosystem, knowing that when you the finance and things like that, they're all part of value creation and value delivery like everybody else.
Absolutely.
The game.
Yeah.
With very real ways to contribute.
Yeah.
Something that I noticed here when I took this job at Social Solutions, I've been here about 18 months, is the CTO and I were very aligned on moving faster, getting working product out there more quickly. We just kind of started getting that train schedule moving really quickly, and we just kind of assumed, myself primarily, that when everybody understood that we were going to be moving faster, the other departments that we're talking about knew what to do. They inherently knew what moving faster meant. And so, I had a sales leader here come to me and say, I love it. I've never worked for a company where we were able to put out so many new product capabilities, but we need to catch up and we need your help. So not just focusing, myopically on my team, on the product team or the tech side with our CTO, but to Mark's point, like, don't just expect sales and finance and operations and everybody to kind of just pick up the momentum. They need some help understanding not just the foundational aspects of Agile, but hey, if we start pushing out code every 4 weeks as opposed to every 12, how is that going to affect our sales cycle? How is that going to affect our support team? How is that going to affect our training team for our customers? How much more quickly does marketing need to get these materials out? And all those discussions, need to happen really upfront, so people don't get surprised or stressed out when all of a sudden the product and tech team have this new culture or this new transformation knowledge, and they're playing catch up. They need to be actively engaged and involved. But again, it's not a democracy at the beginning. It's more about coaching and understanding of, if this happens, how does it affect the rest of the organization? So just a personal learning, relatively recently, in just areas of improvement, we always try to play a factor on when we do something like this, is understanding the ripple effect across the organization to make sure that people aren't surprised by the effects.
I think it would be good for the listeners to know too, just some of the hard success that we saw, or some of the measurable success in the Cars.com experience, in terms of the cycle time. I mentioned the well-being aspects, and I think that there were some numbers that said the turnover was reduced by from 25 or down to 5%. And then likewise, the cycle time and some of those improvements. I think it's important to call out that, hey, it wasn't just everybody coming together and feeling better about what they're doing, but there were some very good and solid results that came out of the transformation.
Oh yeah, I mean, from a product standpoint, we were pushing out code. I mean, Jim and Clay have to keep me honest here. I mean, before, how many releases were we doing a year? Maybe like 2 or 3 for the transformation?
Yeah, it was, I mean, actually, we haven't talked about it here, but one of the things that took place, we moved from what I call a project-based or centric culture, or project-centric culture, to a product team-based. So actually having dedicated product teams established and stood up, that was a big component to this success as well. But to your point, John, I mean, we're sketchy on the metrics here, but I mean, we typically have 20, maybe 25, we call them projects at the time, go out a year. And it's funny, to Clay's point about some folks almost feeling like we invented Agile. I mean, it seemed like those vanity metrics went from, hey, we went 20 to 25 projects, to, hey, we did 100 releases. Then the next month, actually, it's 150 releases and 300 releases. And so it was a little bit of a vanity metric, but it was something that was very tangible to notice that there was a lot of progress being made on just the sheer volume of throughput.
Yeah, I mean, we were able to react really quickly to client feedback, because Jacques and I were on the same team, and I would go out and market, or we would do focus groups, and we'd be able to get that feedback, digest it, and download the team within a week or two. And if we had a backlog, if we were planning our sprints, getting a little more tactical here, it was perfectly acceptable, if not expected, that we would be shifting priorities relatively quickly when we got client feedback, which was amazing in terms of just getting out not just more stuff, but the right stuff. So we would think things in January, these are going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 most important things. All of a sudden 5 becomes number 1 in 2 months because of changes in the marketplace. We're able to be flexible and adjust that. And because myself and Jacques and other people on the team are all familiar with what those strategic important items are, shifting 5 to 1 means no interruption. We didn't have to stop and pause and collect ourselves for 2 weeks to get back on track. It was simply just shifting the little Lego pieces around and saying, this is what's going to be most important. So as details emerged, as changes happened, the flexibility of the system was really important for us, because, again, to Jim's point, it's not just that we're releasing all these other things. We're not just padding our vanity stats. Our clients are happier, the product is better, and we have proof because our customer retention is going up. We're able to warrant our price increases for our core product, and we're able to build new functionality that our customers adopt as soon as we launch. So, you know, those are the real metrics behind it. Those are the business metrics behind why I think our transformation was such a big success was we were putting the right things out quickly, and we had the business metrics to show that.
I want to jump in on.
Oh, yeah.
Oh. Go ahead, Clay.
I mean, talking about all the different organizations, because we kind of designed this agile project process framework, kind of lived it, breathed it, get people to kind of believe in with essentially a tribal aspect around products and planning. And then we kind of started with a very defined kind of ranch house that had very many rooms. You had all the different rooms, right? And so it touches on a few things, but we started creating an open floor plan and breaking down walls and creating more and more open space. Now, we knew that, you know, the finance team was going to keep their room. They were going to have a cycle. They have reporting. There's a board. But you have to just understand that your constraint is just how big of a room do you have to have that flexibility in it. We created bigger rooms by doing things like we had 2 tech teams. We had my tech team and we had Kane's tech team, right? 2 different worlds, not friendly. And then we merged them together under one process in order to justify the organizational improvement. We became more effective at actually agreeing to and hitting dates once we got over ourselves and the developers got over that dates were the worst things in the world, right? Me getting pissed off at you is probably worse than that date, so let's hit the date. So like those things went through in addition to just kind of putting it agile, right? You have to define the process, but you have to believe in it enough that you make actual change into the org. So I'm not saying that we just threw it in and then everything happened, but we definitely got more done. We got essentially, like, I will just say 2 years of backlogged work, either discarded or implemented and deployed within 9 months.
Yeah.
Because I know we just ran out of things to do. We were so effective. And because the rest of the org was so used to just kind of waiting around for things, like I felt like the org lost product communication predominantly because they were not getting excuses as to why things weren't getting done anymore. So they felt like they weren't hearing anything. We would just push out, this got done, this got done, this got done. And there's like kind of a drop in communication because that entire red light system kind of dropped for the most part.
So if we could build on what Jim said, that shift from project to product, I think is a big part of this. And it's something that, you know, as I'm coaching organizations, they're still really struggling with that shift from project to product. And Clay, I actually use one of your quotes constantly, the whole feature marketplace. If you guys can describe a little bit of what that productization exercise was, I think that would be helpful for the audience.
It took amazingly long, actually, I think. Maybe I'm exaggerating, but I remember a lot of conversations about what are the products we have, how are we going to organize things.
It wasn't easy.
Yeah, it wasn't easy.
There's a massive spreadsheet from Clay, I think.
Yeah,
Clay had a huge,
right.
like, I don't know, it was epic.
It was amazing. Yeah. Yeah, and thinking that all through, I think that was the point in those couple months where I said, I think I'm getting an MBA here, without having to pay for it. But it was a worthwhile discussion. I remember Clay's spreadsheet. It was a big help, and it also wasn't non-controversial at the time.
Now,
in retrospect, it seems, oh yeah, of course it would be this way, but it wasn't an easy decision. It was worth going.
Or some of the variables you worked with.
Wow. Can anybody remember?
The
different
products?
Yeah, so the whole shift, how do we define what the products are? How to organize our teams around value?
So we have organizing our teams around our target users, right? The people who were researching, the people who were shopping, the people who were looking to contact a dealer, the people who were, just landing on cars and maybe didn't know anything about where they had just landed, right? That was ultimately what we focused around, which kind of organically created feature sets that ran independently, right? So in the past, we would have products that overlapped each other. So some product manager had this box on this page, and 2 other product managers had other aspects of this page. We would do a project called Up the Amperage on CAA, whatever, SCA.
That was awful.
It was bolding a link. So you had that, and I was focused on creating independent lanes that product managers and the teams that wanted to get work done could get work done independently. That created a boatload of overhead across those teams in order to fulfill. We would deploy features or products, dealer products or advertiser products, if you will, across our consumer products. So we had a view based upon who was paying us, right? Because they wanted a product. And then we had a view based upon who was using the tool. And we had to map internally, how do we get that across? So for instance, the dealer review launch, it got out there, and then after the agile transformation occurred during that. And then we went from one project that had one team working on a bunch of different pieces of the code base and the UX and the billing and everything, to basically splitting up across multiple teams' backlogs and simply coordinating the delivery of those things to make sure all of the independent pieces got out on time, which product-wise was great because you could get aspects of those products out, right? It showed up on mobile. It didn't have to wait for, a whole other product to get it. It also, tech-wise, like to get super nerdy tech, it forced kind of defensive coding because you didn't know whether those pieces were going to be there in time or not. And it kind of just created some better practice by buying in as opposed to, blocking stories. We'll just get it done.
Hey, Clay, talk about remember the chickens, the cows, and the dogs?
I was just looking at that actually. The kids, the cows, and the dogs.
Yeah.
So the kids being, what are your kind of like junior things that you want to really invest in? So it's any product you're really investing in because you believe it can grow, right? You have your cows, which are pretty simply your cash cows. Those are the things that you should pretty much minimize your investment in because it's just throwing off cash, and you're going to do enough just to keep it relevant, make it run, maybe some enhancements to keep it kind of competitive in the marketplace. Then you have your dogs, which were all the projects I wanted to give to John. You wanted to kill those off because they were just costing you money, dragging the company. And you have to remember that anything you put out there, whether it's a consumer packaged good or you have to manage it. There's a cost to it. It's forever. It's not like you build it and it's free forever. It's just a constant drain on revenue. So those dog products are things you need to either say, this is a dog because it's not making enough money, or you need to move it to kit because you're going to invest in it to try to get it back to a cow, right? And usually your dogs are stuff that fell out of the cow because they weren't maintained enough.
Yeah, I mean, that goes back to the budgeting and where you invest in. That's a great way to kind of have that conversation, and powerful. I mean, you get a company to recognize, yeah, that's our cash cow. We're gonna continue to care and feed on it to not jeopardize that revenue stream, and vice versa on those products that are our dog that we shouldn't invest in. So, kind of brings those conversations to the table.
So
we got about 10 minutes to go. Sai, do you want to say anything to kind of get the summary portion going?
Yeah, so just calling out a few things, from our listeners, if you will. If you truly look behind what everyone is sharing, Agile is just a label. It was all about change, and folks, I'm reaching out to the panelists. If you disagree, please say something. But it wasn't just Agile; it was about change, right? To get to something better, as a whole. So we never got caught up in the labels of those things. I think that was one key aspect. Another one is it was very market focused. It wasn't, let's worry about what you call this or that. Everybody became, this group specifically, very market focused in terms of what needed to get done and where you foresaw the future and working with the organization. There's a few things that I really hope the participants pick up on. And this goes all the way back to the beginning of the conversation. You folks were distinctively unique because you were open to confronting human nature, which is both bad, good, ugly, messy at times, right? And it was the whole mix. There was no at all shying away from it. So that made this group extremely unique and continues to, I think, make the impact that you have in the world very, very valuable. Likewise, there were three things that really emanate, and I think you could hear it, and it comes up very subtly in the conversation. You folks are and were and will always be capable. You have likewise a lot of confidence, which is extremely key. If you're going to change the world and you're not confident, then don't even attempt it. So confidence is there. And the big one, and this really came out, is the courage. You folks had the courage and continue to have the courage to have that impact. You made bold moves, right? You stuck together. And if you're not willing to make a lot of the transformations I encounter nowadays, so-called transformations, no one is willing to make bold moves. No one is willing to have the courage. So kudos to all of you. And if you disagree with anything I've said, but say something. But that's me reflecting back what I hear you and how Mark and myself experienced.
Yeah,
Very powerful words.
I'm sure Clay and I were brought up several times by upper middle management and after some of our heated arguments we had with them. So yeah, definitely not scared. This group is not scared to confront or push that change. So yeah, I think that was super important for us, is we didn't shy away. We didn't let the people coming into the kitchen and tasting everything ruin, our process we had in place. We kind of pushed them out and said, we got it, just go somewhere else and let us show that this thing's working.
Yeah, I mean, just to follow up too, is we confronted each other as well.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah.
Pretty hard at times. So
Yeah.
That's important, I think. So you don't get complacent, because that will just cause everything else to become complacent.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was going to say, you talked about the confidence and courage, and I think what allows that to grow and to build is simplicity. So it's so hard to be confident or try to make moves and try to do radical things in a world of complexity. So I think the beautiful thing of what we did was we started really simply, and that's one of the things I've taken away, and I would give to others, I recommend to others who are trying their own transformation, is start simply, start small, build that movement. And I think confidence starts to grow then with those early wins and those early successes. And then your courage starts saying, okay, what's the next thing we could tackle? Like, what's the next mountain? And so I think that simplicity piece is a good thing for folks to take away.
Yeah, buy Sharpies and sticky notes, not a 5-year subscription to Jira.
There you go. Yeah, exactly.
Here.
I think that said so well, Jacques, because things are moving so quickly. Yeah. And the thing that you have planned for, forget the year, the thing that you have planned for next week might change 3 times between now and then. So you have to be very nimble, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Some amazing lessons. So as we begin to wrap up over the next 5 minutes, whatever you have to say about, last minute thoughts, what did you get out of this, and a little bit of what today's panel was like to actually come back together after all these years. I'd love to hear that.
One takeaway that you want the audience to have, and then definitely the panel. Lynn, what are your thoughts, my good friend?
Yeah, just to put probably a bow on my first thought that I shared at the beginning is, cherish these moments. I think this kind of going back in time and seeing everybody again and kind of bringing those memories back was so powerful. But what I'd take away, or what I'd love to share with others, is just to keep a beginner's mind through these things. It's so oftentimes easy to come up with preconceived ideas of how things should be, or I'm going to do things off the shelf, or I'm going to buy a consulting group to kind of give me the solution to this thing. But I think keeping that beginner's mind, I think Sai used to always say, and I can't remember where he got it from, but you got to spin your paradigms around. Like, the way you think work should be probably the exact opposite. And your first instinct for a while, you should do the exact opposite. So I think that's been really powerful for me, is just to keep things really simple and to keep a beginner's mind.
Beautiful, beautiful. How about Clay? What would you leave the group with one aspect to take away, my good friend?
I think that I'll say that if you can get people in an organization to get a mindset that they want to improve, it will organically happen, and they will find the ways to improve. You can just help show them potential tools or possible tools that they can do it with. If you can't get people to believe that, you're going to have a very hard time getting any kind of transformation implemented.
So I've got to tell you, you've used the word believe a couple times very specifically, and I actually use that as the gauge, especially nowadays. If I can't hear the word believe, I'm not going to engage the prospect, because they're not there. So excellent, excellent references all around. Thank you. John, my good friend, what are your thoughts? One major takeaway for people to carry.
Something similar to Clay, I'll word it a little differently, is, you know, when I talk about with product teams, the importance of software and how it's meant to empower people and processes, you need both of those things for software to effectively serve its users. The same goes for the transformation. So it's one thing to have a process. It's going to be different for every organization because every organization has different people. But you need to have process and people. You could have the best consultants in the world, you could have the best transformation team come in and try to help, but if no one's bought in the belief part, the people piece is missing, it's going to fail. Likewise, you can't just have a bunch of people get together and say we're going to change and throw a bunch of stuff at the wall and hope it's going to stick. And so in that aspect, the process is missing. So in this, you know, the key takeaway for us is to really pair those things. And I mentioned earlier how you know, I'm not trying to harp on a negative aspect, but if you don't believe the people in the organization are buying into the process, you need to pick. Do you want to change the process or do you want to change the people? If the answer is the people, you need to do it quickly.
Yep.
You need to find those people that do believe. You need to find those people that are buying in. Not everybody's going to be happy, so that's why I kind of default to find the people that want to do this versus the right process. Get that buy-in, get that core group that understands what lies ahead, and the process is going to help form itself.
Very well said. And you know, quite honestly, it's not a negative. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, it's really powerful, right? Because you got a group that is willing to deal with human nature. You got a group that's willing to deal with reality, right? And help shift the organization's identity. And if you have that, it's basically fostering and cultivating that awareness. So definitely not negative. All good things, man. All good things. Jim, my good friend, chime in. Things people should take away.
Yeah. So actually, I was just thinking as you guys were talking, I guess the one parting thing I'll rip off the famous Doyle Brunson, big poker player in the Poker Hall of Fame, if you've heard the name. He coined the game of Texas Hold'em poker, and it takes a minute to learn but a lifetime to master. And I kind of liken it to Agile and Scrum. You know, it's an easy concept. Yeah, you can read a book and know all the ceremonies and check and box, and yeah, I'm doing this, but if you're not really doing it for the intended outcome and really understanding that, and then ultimately continue to, you know, why do we demo, review, and retro? I mean, you really have to understand those intended outcomes. So that's the one thing I think I'd probably leave with the group.
Excellent. Jacques, my good man.
Well, I'll say to my fellow Cars.com veterans, it's great talking with you all again. It's been a while. A really tactical thing, I guess I'll say to share with everyone is, you know, when we gave presentations to the various audiences at Cars.com, I would say, you know, the time box is king. The time box is king, which is a way of, you know, we say focus your work, do what you can in that time box. But in thinking about this today, I also wanted to add that the retrospective is queen. You have to stop, do that retrospective, and not just say retrospective, oh, we got the code out. No, the retrospective is about the process of getting that code out. And if the time box is king, the retrospective is queen. You have to do both. So it's a very tactical thing to say, but do your retrospective. Stop, pause, reflect, find ways to improve.
Yeah, the foundation, the fundamentals, to your point.
Yeah. And the conflict that comes up in a retrospective, the people saying, you didn't do this, or, you know, you should have done that. That conflict actually, you know, I'm a very conflict averse person. But when that conflict comes up and you push through it, you come through to something much better. So let that happen.
So that's a beautiful statement to make likewise, quite honestly, because you say you're conflict averse, but here you are part of a core team that drove a transformation through. So
yeah, well, I let John and Clay do all the fighting with the senior folks.
Good stuff. And, you know, and before we go to Mark, the audience should notice there is no undertone of challenges with scale. Scale is a very natural growth. The industry has gotten caught up in the scale aspect when the reality is you do the right things, it organically scales.
There you go.
So
well said.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Ferraro.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of with Len. Keep it simple, simple framework, simple pilots, get those success stories. You know, recognize the organic nature of it. It's not just about process, but also structure from how we set up the product teams. And let it be organic and look for the viral change, right? Demonstrate the win.
Very well said.
Very
well
good
said.
to see you.
Barry, if I can, before I hand it back to you, if I can just make one statement. For those listeners, what I suggest, if you really want to do magic, you find the magicians. You find people like this that can constitute a core team that can pull through. So I'll say Mr. Ferraro and I got lucky. We found you folks. But the magic is in you. And thank you for coming back and joining for this conversation, folks.
Yeah.
I'll turn it back to you, Barry.
Thanks. I think, Len, you might have had one more thing you want to share?
No, I was just acknowledging the crew.
Great. Wow. What a powerful series of lessons. I'm just thinking as I go back as a participant also, and I'm putting this together, go back and watch this. There are nuggets throughout here. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Cy, and everybody for putting this together. I think it was more than a reunion. I can feel I think that you guys use the term vibe. I can feel the vibe that's still connected throughout all of you guys, even though Cars.com has moved on to their next piece. But there's something you each individually bring that is very rich, authentic, and genuine. Thank you.